Overnight, police in riot gear facing off with anti-ICE protesters in downtown LA, now declared an unlawful assembly area. Multiple people arrested as tensions flared.
Thousands took to the streets on Sunday to protest immigration sweeps happening throughout the region and the country. Downtown, protesters set vehicles on fire, threw rocks at squad cars, and blocked the busy 101 freeway.
On Saturday, President Trump invoking a rarely used law to call up the National Guard, defying California's governor, who argued it would only inflame protesters.
Obviously, it was a big weekend in LA, and look, it's horrifying. Now, look, I think we have to always keep in mind the scale of what we're actually seeing here. When you zoomed out and they showed sort of the big picture of LA, it did seem like it was happening in pockets, but some of that is because they sent in, essentially combatants, whether that's from the local governments, the local police force, and then obviously the federal side of this to say, hey, we may need more protection in here. And some of it, as Will and I were watching last night, they were talking about a lot of the issues coming from the lack of police.
That's right. They were talking about how there were budget constraints on LAPD and the LA County Sheriff's Department, and some of these things were making it worse. That was the coverage that the local news was giving. At the same time, Governor Newsom had said that President Trump had manufactured a crisis and was inflaming conditions. This is in reference to him activating and federalizing National Guard to go and help out with the situation that had become worse over several days. Gavin Newsom is saying that they will be filing a federal lawsuit against the Trump administration today, and we'll get into some of that as well today. But Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, pushed back on Gavin Newsom's claims that Donald Trump had manufactured the crisis and he can't solve it and we will. And she said this on X: Gavin Newsom did nothing as violent riots erupted in Los Angeles for days. Federal law enforcement officers were attacked by violent radicals and illegal criminals waving foreign flags because Governor Newsom was too weak to protect the city. As the Los Angeles police chief has even said, the riots were getting out of hand. President Trump has stepped in to maintain law and order and protect federal buildings. But there are big questions when the president of the United States uses the National Guard or military for policing civil unrest, as we're seeing here. Generally, the Posse Comitatus Act is something that forbids the use of military from enforcing civil law, but there are always exceptions, and we're going to get into that. But that's what the crux of this lawsuit threat from Governor Newsom is going to be around. So I think our listeners need to hear what the law says, what the options are here, and kind of how it can potentially go forward.
LA Mayor Karen Bass.
I was hoping to prevent this situation from happening. It's the last thing our city needs.
The latest escalation point: President Trump's deployment of 2,000 National Guard troops to LA against the wishes of city and state leaders, including California Governor Gavin Newsom, who accused the president of, quote, trying to manufacture a crisis to create chaos. Trump denied those claims.
There was a lot of violence there. There was a lot of violence, and it could have gotten much worse. And you have an incompetent governor. Well, we're going to have troops everywhere. We're not going to let this happen to our country. We're not going to let our country be torn apart.
There were people who I think were protesting for the reasons that they felt they were passionate about, and I don't take anything away from them. Same way I feel about people who are protesting this. I don't necessarily have to agree with them always, but that is not what we're seeing on the streets. What you're seeing is destruction, rioting, all of the sort of boxes that you can check for this to be a moment of being exploitive of a protest, of a demonstration. It's not always, it just becomes spray painting and violence and looting, and it goes well beyond the issue at hand.
Will this lawsuit that Gavin Newsom has put forward, will it stop the use of the National Guard in this situation? And one, to that point of the narrative that, you know, they're just going around and rounding up people, the Department of Homeland Security put out a list of people that over the last week have been detained by ICE. Someone convicted of second-degree murder. Yeah. Illegal immigrant that was convicted of that. Some of these charges, I cannot read on air what these people had done to people in the United States that while they're here illegally. It's grotesque. It's terrible. A lot of violence, a lot of very horrible crimes. So it's not just that one narrative. They are doing what Tom Homan has said, is that they are going to first go after the worst of the worst and try to get a handle on what is seen by many people in this country that voted for this, that this is rounding up and getting rid of the people here that are doing horrible things and shouldn't have been here in the first place. But the big question goes back to, can the president even do this? Can he send the National Guard? Because legally, can he legally do this? And it's kind of an untested waters at this point, as many things within.
They said the last time National Guard was done like something like this was under Kennedy, I believe.
There were some that it was used in this way where governors of some southern states were not allowing the integration of universities. And so therefore the president, because the governor was not allowing the enforcement of federal law, sent the National Guard there. So some of that during the Civil Rights era, the National Guard was used in this way outside of the normal channel where the governor can request the president to federalize the National Guard to help with disaster relief. If there is an out-of-control riot, it was used at the request of the governor after the Rodney King riots in 92 during George H.W. Bush. And so the National Guard was used there, but it was in conjunction with the governor. What we have here is where normally the National Guard is under the governor's control. But under Title 10, all forces at the end of the day are under the commander-in-chief. So can the president direct the National Guard outside of the governor's control, federalize them, so to speak? And what it comes down to is actually an interesting title from 1807. It was the Insurrection Act of 1807. We're going that far back. But that is a part of Title 10, which is how the armed forces are to be conducted under federal law. In this, it says, the use of militia and armed forces to enforce federal authority. Whenever the president considers that unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblages or rebellion against the authority of the United States make it impractical to enforce the laws of the United States in any state by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, he may call into federal service such of the militia of any state and use such of the armed forces as he considers necessary to enforce those laws or suppress the rebellion. What the president is saying here is that under this title, that this is a rebellion. Their entire purpose is not just to be heard, but it is to stop ICE enforcement, the enforcement of federal law. And the governor of that state is not on board with helping the president ensure that federal law is being carried out.
Here is a statement from President Trump. He said, "We made a great decision in sending the National Guard to deal with the violent, instigated riots in California. If we had not done so, Los Angeles would have been completely obliterated. The very incompetent governor, Gavin Newsom, and Mayor Karen Bass," again, these are his words, not mine, should be saying, "Thank you, President Trump. You are so wonderful. We would be nothing without you, sir." Instead, they chose to lie to the people of California and America by saying that we weren't needed, and these were peaceful protests. Just look at one picture or video of the violence and destruction that tells you all you need to know. We will always do what is needed to keep our citizens safe so we can together make America great again. If you strip away the Trumpiness of that post, what it really reads is, we had to do it to protect the citizens. We had to send in the National Guard. I wish they were thanking us instead of making us the villains.
Well, and he also raises that many of these people have been saying these were peaceful protests. You even saw a statement out of the former vice president's office, Kamala Harris, that said, these demonstrations in defense of our immigrant neighbors have been overwhelmingly peaceful. They're redoing the meme of the fiery but mostly peaceful that CNN I think lost every last bit of credibility they had in that moment during the 2020 riots, that these are fiery but mostly peaceful. The moment that they are throwing cinder blocks at police or shooting fireworks at police and it's going unchecked and they're setting cars on fire, that's no longer peaceful. That is causing property damage, potential life-threatening damage. They're throwing bird scooters off overpasses at police cars. That's not peaceful. I don't care if half the people aren't doing it or what numbers are. That isn't peaceful when that's now being fostered and your presence on that is giving cover for those of them that are not peaceful. So the whole thing becomes not peaceful.
For those of us who live in Los Angeles, we know that this is a very real riot and multiple riots. It's happening. Our city already is mismanagement when it comes to fire, water, and homelessness and taxes. We need some sort of federal response to punish these individuals, whether it's DOJ or the FBI. We can't just point out all of these individuals that are fanning the flames of lawlessness. We need to prosecute people so that it doesn't happen again. The California common sense voter and citizen is so tired of this. I really believe that we are going to see in the next election someone like Karen Bass completely defeated, someone like Gavin Newsom completely defeated, because people want common sense leadership. They want people who are going to solve problems. And right now, California and specifically Los Angeles is getting worse, not better.
The protests are so huge. We have to come back and answer back with the National Guard and different things, because this is unprecedented. And when the National Guard was called in, I could sleep at night. It gave me a ton of peace. It's amazing. I mean, it's out in my backyard, and it's just so disruptive.
We are so excited to announce the ACLJ's brand new app, completely redesigned to provide you with the best tools available to partner with us at the ACLJ. You can watch the daily Seculo program, sign the petitions, customize your ACLJ membership experience, donate with the click of a button, and receive up-to-the-minute critical updates that the mainstream media can't censor. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to your phone's app store, search ACLJ, and click install. It's that simple.